So within the last couple of weeks, I noticed that I've come across a few fragrances focusing on apples or featuring apples as a pretty prominent note. I thought to myself, I have not done a video focusing on this note, and I thought let's go ahead and put together this note, especially since I am a fan of apples. I love to eat them. They're one of my favorite fruits, but I like my apples to be kind of crispy, crunchy, juicy, drippy, and also tart and sweet at the same time. That combination for me is the best, and I also like that combination in fragrances. Very, very fragrant smells, and I enjoy the apple. It's one of my favorite fruits, as I said, and I enjoy the smell of it in fragrances. So in this video, I've got 12 fragrances focusing on apples coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about apples. I think they make for a great fragrance experience, kind of fruity, fresh, juicy, crisp, crunchy, all of those come to mind. And these are some of my favorite apple fragrances. And you know, I haven't included stuff that's very, very popular. And I also have decided to leave off apple fragrances or fragrances featuring apples that go into a very, very gourmand direction. Mostly I wanted to focus on fresh appley fragrances, but there are a few more heavier apple experiences. But all of them feature this note pretty prominently. Before I let you know what they are, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button. Also, click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So how many of you enjoys this note in fragrances? Do you have a favorite apple fragrance that you love? Can you put that down in the comments so I can find out? Let's go ahead and get started with one fragrance from the house of ETAT LIBRE Orange. This is I Am Trash. The reason it's called I Am Trash is because they have upcycling and recycling way of using ingredients for making this particular fragrance. But it is a very appley experience, very, very juicy. It smells of apples, like a concentrated smell of apples, but naturalistic, not artificial and things like that. But the apples come through very, very juicy, but also crisp and crunchy. I get sweetness and also some tartness in this one. Along with the apples, you've got the experience of ISOE Super, so it's very, very woody. Akigalawood, there is some rose in the background, some sandalwood, some cedar. So mostly it's the apples and the rose. The rose is not so strong. It's about the apples, and it's very, very juicy, crisp apples. So woods as well. It's sweet, it's fresh, it's musky, it's green, lightly ambery, but really, really delicious. It's I Am Trash from the house of ETAT LIBRE Orange. Next, going to the house of JEROBOAM. It's VESPERO. This is a hidden kind of a secret here. This is kind of a fragrance that I guess pays tribute to something like Aventus, but it's totally different. It's an appley version of something like Aventus because there's no pineapple here, but there's lots of citruses. It's juicy, but in the background there's something smoky because I think it has leather as a note, and the leather kind of gets smoky, and the contrast of the apple with the leather, and there's some musk in here along with pink grapefruit, ambery woods, patchouli, and geranium makes for a very, very sexy wear. It's kind of a you know, one of those fragrances that's a crowd pleaser, and I like this because there's people that really enjoy Aventus. Some want the fruitier batch, some want the smokier batch. This to me kind of acts like it's a smokier batch, but it's not really Aventus. It's VESPERO from the house of JEROBOAM, you know, featuring all this kind of very, very juicy appley experience with leather musk. The other thing about this particular fragrance, it does remind me of vetiver. Like, I feel like there's vetiver in here, and I think it's the smokiness from the leather playing tricks on my nose and thinking that I'm smelling apples against vetiver. It's a really great fragrance, VESPERO from the house of JEROBOAM. The next one is a fragrance I recently spoke about. It's BRIONI's new EDP Intense. This is a male targeted release. The previous two are unisex. This to me is sweet apples come to life. Very, very intense, very, very pungent in the fragrance. Pungent in a good way, is in strong, vivid kind of smell. You can totally like picture the strong smell of the apples. It's that kind of a experience with this particular fragrance, but it smells so good. It's really interesting that it starts very appley, and then it develops into kind of something more amber woody in the dry down. You experience lots of green apples up top. There is Ambroxan here, and then of course there's some saffron as well. There is oud in the base and some patchouli and vanilla ambery touches. Really wonderful fragrance. It's Brioni EDP Intense, and if you compare this to the original Brioni EDP, they are different and the same at the same time. This is called Intense because I think it settles to more of a oudy amber experience, whereas the original is more focusing on violet leaves, and there was some, you know, a little bit of a appley touch in the original as well, whereas here it's full on in your face apples. So Brioni EDP Intense is the third fragrance I'm talking about today. Next I'm going to the house of Hermes. It's Un Jardin sur le Toit. This is a very fresh fragrance in the Garden or Jardin series of fragrances from Hermes, and it's one of my favorites. And I like this because it's got loads of apples, it's juicy, it's fruity, pulpy kind of an experience, but it's got unique notes. You know, it says it's apple tree, but I'm getting the fruits in here, so I'm assuming they've got the combination of the woods and also the fruit from the apples. Perhaps a little bit of the floral touch in here, but there's magnolia in here, and then there's also pear tree. So it's a combination of both the fruits of the apple and the pear, but there's a little bit of a mintiness under there. There's like a mint note, something aromatic, but it's very green and fruity, but juicy, citrusy, fresh and sweet. Delicious fragrance. Let me know if you're a fan of this Un Jardin collection of fragrances from Hermes. I have a whole video on the entire collection on the channel you can go catch to discover all the different Jardin fragrances, but this is definitely one that's full on apple fruity. So Un Jardin sur le Toit from the house of Hermes. The next fragrance is definitely an appley staple fragrance for you know, folks that love fragrances in the community. Go into the house of BYREDO. It's pulp, but it's apples along with figs and then also black currants. So it's definitely a full-on fruity experience. But for me, it's definitely kind of camphoric green from the tree of the fig. I'm smelling the actual fig tree. Like if you've ever sat under a fig tree, a big, full, big on, you know, like leaves and everything tree, and there's like a picnic table under it, and you've had, you know, meals and things like that, and you can smell the tree because it's so fragrant, and all those leaves have this kind of like camphoric bitter greenness that's captured here against the fruitiness of the apple, and then of course the black currant. But there's also lots of citruses here: bergamot, some tiare flower, some praline, peach blossom, cedar, and cardamom. It makes for a very interesting fragrance. It's pulpy, it's juicy, it's wet and drippy, but might be a little off-putting to some people. Very unique fragrance. I have a love-hate relationship with this one, like I do with Santal 33. Sometimes I really love it, and sometimes my nose is different and it doesn't like the way it smells. But right now I'm enjoying it. So Pulp by BYREDO, it's a great smell. This next fragrance is from the house of Frédéric Malle. This is Promise. So here we go into a boozy direction, kind of like an apple liqueur, kind of like a Calvados or apple brandy or something in that kind of a direction, but a really delicious fragrance featuring notes of cypriol, apples, rose, pink pepper, patchouli, labdanum, cloves, castoreum, ambroxan. So this particular fragrance does really smell like a aged liqueur with the apples in the background. Like you actually literally smell the barrel aging. Like perhaps you're at some kind of a distillery and the person that works there is kind of grabbing some of the booze or the spirit that's been kind of like macerating, and then you're smelling the woods there, and then you're smelling the fruits that kind of like turned, you know how they ferment and things like that. So that whole entire smell is captured in there. You do experience the rose in there and the spiciness and the woods, but a very delicious fragrance. It's Frédéric Malle's Promise, and that's the sixth fragrance I'm talking about today. Next I'm going to the house of Tiziana Terenzi. It's Orza, this one right here. Orza, it's from one of the Sea Stars collection fragrances, and it's a fruit bomb, but this is definitely more of an intense fruit bomb. And even though this is not gourmand, it's not overly ambery and warm, There is definitely freshness here. It's definitely in line with the Tiziana Terenzi fragrances of being thick, heavy, dense experiences. And even though we're dealing with lots of fruits here, it's a very fruity fragrance, but it's definitely one that has great longevity. So the experience is heavy and dense, as I said. This features notes of green apples with wild berries, caramel, coconut, plum, vanilla, musk, orchid, benzoin, amber, and jasmine. So it's a fruity, floral, amber, woody kind of an experience, and you get lots of different, you know, stabs of the fruit smells in here. The berries definitely come through. The green apples definitely comes through. It's got the crispness, the freshness, and a little bit of tartness from the green apples. And then you've got the caramel, so you're kind of experiencing like a apple drenched with caramel kind of an experience, and then throw in some coconutty touches, almost like a little bit of tropical at the same time, but lots of fruits and vanillic touches, and ambery dry down with this one, fully focusing on the fruits up top. So this is Orza from the house of Tiziana Terenzi, a great fragrance. This next one's from the house of Wilhelm Parfumery. This is Dear Polly. I'm actually wearing this fragrance right now. I actually really love the way this one smells. In fact, I really like the way the fragrances smell at this particular brand. They're created by, most of them are created by most of the fragrances at BYREDO. Jérôme Epinay, he did a great job with this one. So some of the fragrances might remind you of one another back and forth. But Dear Polly, to me, is a very tea-like experience with the apple note in there. So it's tea, so it's very cozy. There's this soothing, calming effect about this particular fragrance, but then you've got this crisp, juicy, you know, what do you call it, the pulpy kind of an apple experience contrasted with bergamot as well. So tea, it's Ceylon black tea, bergamot, apple, black amber, musk, and oak moss. The combination is quite delicious. It has a great trail. It's really beautiful. It's not overwhelming. It's not like a beastly experience, but a great balanced fragrance with that tea, calming, fruity, apple, and then of course citrusy, bergamot, and musk. This is Dear Polly from the house of Wilhelm Parfumery. Great fragrance. The next fragrance I'm talking about is from the house of Imaginary Authors. It's Slow Explosions. This to me is so delicious. The apple in here is almost like the apple in here, and the apple in here also has, I shouldn't say, this fragrance also has saffron, and this one also has saffron. So the apple and saffron in here remind me of the apple and saffron in here, but they're completely different fragrances. This has loads of rose. This one does not have rose. This one just has a really leathery experience, an aromatic, spicy, leathery experience with the saffron, the apples, the juiciness of the apples, the crispness, the tartness of the apples, the sweetness, along with the rose. It's so delicious, but it's loads of saffron, leather, apple, rose, benzoin, cashmere, and it's spicy, it's aromatic, it's fruity, it's rosy, and leathery at the same time. Slow Explosions from the House of Imaginary Authors is the 9th fragrance I'm talking about today. Next up, going to the house of Kajal, it's Dahab, this one right here. This is a fruity fragrance focusing on lots of musk with green apples and passion fruit. This does get warmer. It does have more of a warm, spicy, warm, ambery kind of an experience, but it's very fruity up top. So you experience the fruitiness up top with the passion fruit combo with the green apples, and this is a really great, you know, section of the fragrance. It's the kind of tropical passion fruit like smell, which is sweet and tart, and then of course you've got the green apples in there, which is also sweet and tart. So this particular fragrance has this sweet tartness about it, but then it settles to the ambery touch. It has some light vanillic qualities, and then of course you've got some patchouli, bergamot, and coriander in here as well. So there is a little bit of a powdery touch, but for me it's all about the fruits in here. It's a very fruity experience, and it's a nice combo with the passion fruit, and then of course the apples as well. Great fragrance. It's Dahab from Kajal. That is one definitely you should check out. And this one is a male targeted release from the house of Parfums de Marly. This is Greenlee. Greenlee is so fresh, so juicy and fresh, a little minty as well. Like there's some mintiness in the background, but I really like it, and I wear a lot of it when it's really hot outside, because I like how juicy and drippy it smells. Like you've actually cut into an apple and you've put it on your table or countertop and you could see all the drippings from it. That's the kind of experience I get with this one. Like a very, very juicy wet apple. But it's green apple, oak moss, cashmeran, petitgrain, bergamot, mandarin orange, pomerose, and musk. You know, I think I'm getting that mintiness from the petitgrain note. There's got a bitter kind of bitterness, like bitter, woody, aromatic touch, but it's citrusy, and it's got the kind of smell of citruses, but it's the petitgrain leaves of the orange tree. But really great fragrance. I really like this one, and it's not anything like, oh my god, they've done the most amazing fragrance kind of thing. It's very, very common smell, but I really think they did a great job with it, and I really like wearing it for a alternative to a citrusy fresh fragrance, and this is more of a appley fresh fragrance. So Greenly, a great fragrance from the house of Parfums de Marly. And last but not least, this is Frederic Malle. Once again, going to the house of Frederic Malle. It's outrageous. So I'm ending with this one because this is one that I really enjoy and I've had for a while, and I like its freshness once again, its fruitiness, and also citrus floral touches. This is a fragrance that used to be a Barney's exclusive. Obviously Barney's is no longer, now it's put into the regular collection, and I think it's a definitely, once again, a citrus, or a fresh fragrance I should say, not a citrus, that goes in a different direction. So it's neroli, green apple, orange blossom, lime, grapefruit, mint, cinnamon, musk, aldehydes, and cedar. Very, very unique notes. It's a great job that Sophia Grossman has done to create this fragrance. It's mostly fresh, but a unique fresh fragrance. It's just a very interesting combination of the neroli orange blossom with green apple, but you've got the lime thrown in there, grapefruit, then you've got mint. So aldehydes also adds this fizziness, so you experience this kind of like a very fresh, almost tropical cocktail experience. Really, really wonderful. It's Frederic Malle's Outrageous, and that's the last apple fragrance I'm going to talk to you about today. Let me know your thoughts on these apple focused fragrances. Are you a fan of these ones? And if I've missed an apple fragrance, let me know what it is. Put a comment down so I can find out. I really love this fruit, not only to eat but also as a smell. I think the smell of the apple is amazing, and every fall I try and go up to Apple Hill here in Northern California to experience the apple trees and also the cultivation and harvesting of the fruits, because I just love apples. I think one of the most amazing fruits ever. Nothing really unique like a passion fruit or pineapple, but still I love the way apples taste, and I love the way they smell in fragrances. So let me know if you have a favorite apple fragrance that I have not discussed today. Put a comment down so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.